So welcome to lesson 6 of your bioenergetics unit of work. Now, last lesson we looked at respiration and touched on aerobic respiration. In today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at anaerobic respiration. So make sure either you've got a digital copy of the workbook, printed copy, or just your own blank notebook on which to obviously answer questions and make your own notes as we go through the tutorial and watch any videos that we need to. So to start with, you'll see for lesson 6 anaerobic respiration, there is our standard knowledge check questions to begin with. Can you pause the video now at this point and simply have a go at these knowledge check questions? After we have had a go at these, unpause the video and we'll go through the answers. Right, hopefully you should have paused the video, had a go at the questions and then unpaused. So let's go through the answers. Now correct anything you've got wrong, mark what you've got right, green pen what you need to. So reactants for photosynthesis, by now hopefully you'll know there's CO2 and water. The products you'll know that are oxygen and glucose. What are the 4 components needed for photosynthesis? So hopefully you remember there's CO2, light, water, and chlorophyll. What does endothermic mean? Remember, it's the opposite of exothermic. It absorbs energy from surroundings. Identify 3 uses of respiration. We talked about them last lesson. It keeps animals warm, helps them to move, and making more and larger molecules, so therefore helps them to grow. Identify the chemical reaction that occurs when sugar is heated. So remember, it's combustion because it's burning in oxygen. Process by which oxygen enters the circulatory system. Diffusion from the lungs to the blood. And it is the red blood cells that carry oxygen around the body. So this lesson is going to focus on writing and understanding the word and symbol equation for anaerobic respiration, and also making sure that we can define anaerobic and state what anaerobic respiration is used for. So if we go through this first paragraph together. Anaerobic means without oxygen. It's the very basic definition of it. Take nothing away from today, take away that. So sometimes there is not enough oxygen present for aerobic respiration to occur, so anaerobic respiration occurs. Anaerobic means without oxygen. There are 2 types of anaerobic respiration. The first occurs in plants and yeast when there is little or no oxygen, so roots if waterlogged in plants, and rotting detritus or on a woodland floor. So, these are places in a plant it can occur. The second types can occur in muscle cells when there's little oxygen present, so when blood flow is not sending enough oxygen to the muscle. Both types are less efficient than aerobic respiration as they transfer less energy. That's important. So watch the following clip on your notes page, make a note of your understanding of the term oxygen debt. So that's the first thing I'd like you to do. Pause the video. From the description box below, watch the first hyperlink for video 1. And can you find out and make a note of what you understand oxygen debt to be? Once you've done that, we'll just go through it together in a moment, okay? Good, so hopefully you've paused the video and hopefully you've had a look at what oxygen debt is. Now, if you weren't sure, you can have a little make of some of your own notes on the side over here while we just describe oxygen debt. Now, the important thing is, when you carry out anaerobic respiration, in muscles, from glucose you produce energy, but also you produce lactic acid. Now this is important, lactic acid, because when you have a build-up of lactic acid, in the muscles, so as you do more anaerobic respiration, use more glucose and produce more energy and more lactic acid, it causes pain and fatigue. It's tiredness, which if you think marathon runners run a long way, they get pain in their legs, they get tired, we otherwise say, i.e. causes cramps of the muscles. Okay? Now, oxygen debt is important because what happens once that muscle pain is built up and that fatigue has been caused, person, what do? Do they breathe normally or do they breathe more heavily? They breathe more heavily. And that's to try and obtain more oxygen. Because importantly, oxygen breaks down lactic acid and removes it. And so if that happens, cramps subside, they disappear, they reduce. And they break down lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water. So this term, oxygen debt, is important. Oxygen debt is the amount of oxygen needed to break down and remove lactic acid from muscles. Okay, so that's what we mean by the term oxygen debt, which hopefully will give you a bit of a better understanding of. Right, let's move on. So just to clarify, if you haven't got those notes down, obviously pause the video and you can take your own notes of these just to make sure you've got that understanding of oxygen debt. If we move on to the equations now. So the word equation for respiration in plants and yeast, glucose is broken down into either ethanol and carbon dioxide. Now these are important in the production of food substances. Undo that. Try that again. Ethanol is used to produce alcohol, and carbon dioxide produced by yeast is used to make bread rise. Now, the chemical equation for it here, the most important thing is that you understand that this is the word equation involving plants and yeast, and the word equation in muscles, so i.e. in animals, a little bit different, simpler. Glucose is broken down into lactic acid, which, as we know, lactic acid causes muscle cramps. It causes muscle cramps. Good. Let's move on to uses now. So make sure you've got those notes down. so anaerobic respiration in yeast cells is a process called fermentation. Enzymes in the yeast are biological catalysts that help increase the speed of reaction. The process is very useful to humans in food production as it helps to produce bread and alcoholic drinks. In bread production, the fermentation produces carbon dioxide gas bubbles that allow bread to rise, and alcohol is produced in low quantities and evaporates off. In alcohol production, different plant materials make different alcoholic drinks. So, for example, barley makes hops. Obviously, wine is made from grapes. Remember, the key point is you need the ethanol and carbon dioxide. They are the useful products. Right. There is now an experiment detailed here, which obviously you can't do at home unless you have some of this equipment, but I'm not going to ask you to do that. What I want you to do, though, is have a think about some of the things that are going on here. So, the rate of anaerobic respiration can be measured, and as can the factors that affect respiration. One of the factors is temperature. So we will measure the effects of temperature on respiration. Now, I want you to think about this. If you increase temperature of molecules, what does that do to their kinetic energy? Kinetic energy also increases. Okay? Kinetic energy also increases. Now, if the kinetic energy also increases, what are the molecules doing more of in terms of their movement? The molecules move more. Now, in order for a chemical reaction to occur, what do different molecules have to do? They have to collide. So if the molecules move more, what's that going to do to their chance of colliding? It increases chances of collisions and therefore reactions. So if you're increasing the chances of collisions, what do you think is going to happen to the rate of respiration? So the rate, or the speed of respiration, if there are more collisions between molecules involved, more frequently, the rate of respiration is going to go up. So, bearing that in mind, having a look at this practical. In 5 test tubes, add 5 millilitres of the sugar, water and yeast solution. Leave one test tube rack in desk and place others in water bath at temperature 30, 40, 50, 60 degrees Celsius. Leave the test tubes for 5 minutes, collect the test tubes and measure the height of the foam produced. Height of foam produced. So foam collects CO2 bubbles, like in bread. More foam equals more respiration. So based on this explanation over here, what do you think is going to happen as the temperature increases? So as the temperature increases, more foam should be produced. Why would this be? Because respiration is happening more quickly. So, a bit of an explanation there because obviously you can't do the practical. Don't worry about this because we've just explained this, and if you've made your own notes, you will have been able to understand the explanation there. But pause the video now and just have a look at video 2 in the description box below, because that gives you an example of a version of the experiment being done. It will give you a little bit more context to it. Once you've done that, you can unpause it and we'll go on to the final section. Right, good. So hopefully you've unpaused. And now the last couple of things I want us to have a look at are the checkpoint question initially. So cheetahs are able to sprint very fast. After sprinting, a cheetah will puff and pant for several minutes. With reference to respiration, explain why this happens. So remember, what are we referring to today? We're talking about anaerobic respiration. So if they're carrying out anaerobic respiration, why do they puff and pant after running a lot? Well, what have they been producing? Lactic acid. And that's to meet energy needs. The energy that it needs to run really fast. So, it's finished. So now it's got lots of lactic acid built up. So what does it need to break down this lactic acid? Folks, so lactic acid is broken down by oxygen. So lactic acid is broken down by oxygen. So the cheetah puffs and pants and its breathing rate stays high. Oh my days, not going well today, is it? Sorry folks, let's try that again. So it stays high. So its breathing rate stays high. So i.e. puffs and pants. Why? To obtain as much oxygen as possible. In order to remove the lactic acid. Good. So you've got an example of how we can apply some of this context to a typical exam question. So now, can you finish by having a look independently at the application and knowledge check questions? And once you have done that, we'll then review them. So pause the video now and have a look at these. Right, good. So the application and knowledge check questions, if we just review them together. So define the term anaerobic. Hopefully you should have picked up that means without oxygen. Mark it as correct or green pen it if you haven't got it correct. State the products of anaerobic respiration in yeast. So remember that's plant and yeast produce ethanol for alcohol and CO2 for bread production. And I've just answered the next two questions. Identify two uses of anaerobic respiration in yeast, alcohol and bread production. Now, in the experiment that I was mentioning, the independent variable is the thing that's being changed. So in the experiment, what was being changed? It was the temperature. Now, what makes an experiment reliable, and why might this one not be reliable in terms of results? Because results weren't repeated. Because why do you repeat results? You repeat them in order to see if there are any anomalies, strange results that have happened that you can't explain, and be able to calculate a mean or an average. State the purpose of the test tube at room temperature. We call that a control. What piece of apparatus could we attach to the test tube to get more quantitative data results, and why? Now, it's about the production of gas. And gas production is more quantitatively and get exact amounts measured using a syringe to collect the gas in. Now, think about plant cells. What does a vacuole contain? It contains nutrients, water, and cell sap. And then what's the definition of diffusion? We've mentioned this a little bit in relation to respiration. The movement of molecules from high to low concentration via a partially permeable membrane. So a membrane with lots of holes in it. So for example, oxygen moving through the alveoli into the blood and being carried around the body. So make sure you obviously watch those videos because that makes this lesson a bit more, context of it a bit easier to understand. Otherwise, that is lesson 6.